Good evening. Welcome to this Tuesday night show of Employment Law Today. I'm Eric Sarver, host of the show here on Talk Radio NYC, and I'm joined tonight by my guest, special guest, a friend and colleague of mine, Miss Tricia Taitt. Trish, welcome to the show. Good to see you. I think you have to unmute yourself there for a moment.
Hi.
Hi, good to see you, Tricia. Welcome. Thanks for.
Okay, great. You can hear me. Of course, in this world of
Yep.
Zoom calls, sometimes technology doesn't always work for us.
Yes, I can hear you now. You sound great. So I thought before I introduce you, I'd take a moment just going to take a moment for those that may be joining us now to once again welcome everyone to the show. My name is Eric Sauver. I'm a business law and employment law attorney. My practice is the law office of Eric M. Sauver. And I also host this weekly radio show at 5 p.m. on the station talkradio.nyc. Before introducing Tricia to the show, for those that might be watching or joining for the very first time, I thought I would perhaps just give a little intro about what the show is about. And mainly, the show came to mind for me when I saw clients of mine, small and mid-sized business owners, who were really struggling with COVID-19. You know, all the different new labor and employment guidelines, laws, different regulations, long-standing employment laws that are now even more crucial to pay attention to, combining that with issues around furloughing employees or paid time off for coronavirus, it could also be more overwhelming. So my goal is to educate people through speaking with other employment law experts on employment law topics. Number two, my goal is to inspire and motivate people by having guests on the show. And these guests of mine are colleagues who specialize in other areas that business owners might really benefit from, such as help with their marketing or cybersecurity or their financial planning or even their outsourced CFO type of issues. And so, with that backdrop, I thought I would bring my colleague Tricia Taitt onto the show. And I just want to read, if I may, a little summary of Tricia's background and her sort of road to where she is today. If I may, Tricia, jump in there. Okay. So Tricia Taitt, MBA, is a virtual CFO and a financial consultant. She is the founder and principal of The Art of Money Matters, which is an outsourced CFO financial consulting firm for businesses. After spending 8 years on Wall Street as an equity market sales specialist, if I got that right, and corporate finance manager at industry powerhouses such as Merrill Lynch and Citigroup, Tricia decided to use her core finance and accounting skills to provide outsourced CFO services and financial consulting services to small and mid-sized businesses. She believes she can make a big difference there and have a more personally rewarding impact. Tricia founded a company called The Art of Money Matters, an outsourced CFO firm that offers growth-minded small to mid-sized businesses the financial expertise and the big picture perspective that helps drive profitability, improve cash flow, assess the financial health of their business, uncover opportunities to increase their profit margin, and develop tactics to fund growth. Ms. Taitt is further an advocate, speaker, and driving force behind support for women-owned businesses and has provided invaluable support to women in small business, including organizing and participating in conferences and related events. So with that backdrop, Tricia, once again, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, Eric. I really appreciate it. I think this is a good time to talk numbers. Well, it's always a good time to talk numbers in my book, but it's a good time, I think, to talk about it. Well, thank you for having me.
Sure, pleasure to have you on the show. Well, so Tricia, I thought I would perhaps open up the conversation tonight. I mean, I gave some background about your past, but tell us a little about yourself, if I may ask. You know, anything you want to add in any aspect, anything you'd like to share with our listeners this evening?
Well, you've covered most of it. There's a lot of technical aspects. I think some of the things that may surprise people about me is that while I've been a finance professional for 20 years, I have a passion and a heart for dance and the performing arts. And so I'm very much a left brain and a right brain person. And the two things sort of connect in some wonderful way, but I need the creative juices and my creative life in order to inform the financial life. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is this year, my business has not taken a full detour, but sort of focused itself on dealing with issues that women entrepreneurs are facing. And I think the triple pandemic has helped us realize that unfortunately, sometimes we are disproportionately affected by economic recessions or any sort of downturn. So there's a lot of support in the way of access to capital and in the way of financial education and empowerment that's needed for women entrepreneurs. So those are two things I would add.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting to hear about how the left-right brain connection, how those two passions of yours, the creativity and that talent, can inform the outside-the-box thinking that I think goes along with CFO services. And further, they mentioned that triple pandemic. I think it's so crucial to mention that besides the fact that this pandemic has impacted a lot of small and mid-sized businesses, that everything that I've read statistically and anecdotally, just from good friends and colleagues I know, have confirmed that this pandemic has indeed hit women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses and women minority-owned businesses a lot harder than businesses owned by men, particularly by white men. So I think that's an important point not to in any way gloss over in any respect. And I know you've done some work in that area. I've seen some of your webinars, some of your presentations online. So it's inspiring to see somebody who wants to, who A, can recognize that, and B, can give to the community in that regard. So I think that's really an admirable thing that you're doing.
I mean, I think this pandemic has given me an opportunity, even though I've been working with small and mid-sized businesses for 10 years, a variety of businesses. And I started focusing on outsourced CFO services in the past 5 years. When I initially even thought of being an entrepreneur, my why was to empower business owners around their numbers. And so the pandemic has helped me reconnect to my why, which is to give value, to be of service and empowerment.
And I remember that you and I had done some combined virtual town halls and webinars back in the spring. And I remember very distinctly a conversation I had with you when I'd asked you to come on board on a group sort of panel discussion. And we talked about the whole being of service and finding purpose, and how the pandemic in a way slowed people down and forced many people to, I wouldn't even say reassess, but sort of to assess what's happening and to see what our values are. And that's, I think, an important point, and might be a good segue into a good first question maybe for you regarding what you've seen with small mid-sized businesses. I'm curious, what are some of the most common financial mistakes that you may have seen small business owners make during the different phases of this pandemic?
I think, well, definitely this pandemic has illuminated some of there are like five typical financial mistakes that I see small businesses make, and the pandemic has just exacerbated those situations. So the first one, which is a huge one, which I talk about all the time in my blog posts, in my social commentary, is about managing cash flow. Poor cash flow management. And so now everyone is really particular about giving each dollar a job and being very vigilant around how they manage cash, either bringing cash in or vigilant about either cost cutting or renegotiating expenses and things like that. So hopefully people are really focusing on ways to manage and be savvy and agile in managing their cash. The second mistake that I typically see that, is not tracking performance. So a lot of business owners, surprisingly, when they had to apply for the PPP loan or EIDL loan, were not able to take advantage of these opportunities quickly because they didn't have the books. They didn't have like their 2019 tax returns or any of their financial statements ready in order to apply and be
Right.
responsive. And so, unfortunately, the PPP loan was closed out pretty quickly, and thank God the SBA reopened it. But what I hear from a lot of business owners, especially those who weren't tracking their financials, is that they wish they had. And like this pandemic has helped them realize that how important it is. And number 3 is about operating without the right like systems and policies and procedures in place. And I'm also hearing from business owners, because there is quote unquote downtime, they've been meaning to put an employee handbook together or put an operations manual together or like streamline a process or automate things, right? So this has given them an opportunity to do that. I would say number 4 is poor future planning. Within my process or discovery process of getting to know a business owner, I typically ask them, I never leave without asking them, where would you want to be in 6 months to a year? And everyone always has like an answer of where they want to be. And I go, how are you planning to get there? And there's not much of a plan. So because of the background I come from, I'm always helping business owners or my clients plan for their future, budget, project. I'm always like stress testing the thing that they want to do, because everything is always super optimistic. But I'm always asking additional questions and qualifying questions to figure out if like their plan is realistic and right, and if you're setting SMART goals. And a number of us know what the like SMART acronym means, that there's specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and then within a time frame, right? And then like the 5th mistake that I typically see business owners make is that they don't have the right accounting or financial team or expertise accessible or in place. Even if they don't have it in place or they can't afford everyone that they need, it's not accessible. Everyone starts their business and they start with a CPA, because of course you have to pay Uncle Sam and you have to do your tax returns, and who likes doing taxes in the first place? But along the way, as your business grows, it's important to like outsource the things that maybe is not your strong suit. And so, having a bookkeeper, do your financial record keeping, and then as you even expand and grow further, having like a CFO, somebody with a strategic financial thinking cap on, to help you analyze your numbers and figure out how you can plan for the future. That's what a CFO would do. And even if you can't hire one full-time, you can get one part-time and not, get a part-time CFO. So it's important to have the right people either on your team or accessible, especially during times like this. I was doing scenario analysis for business owners, because they were like, well, what if I only make 50% of my revenue this year? What if, what would it look like if I don't make any sales? What would it look like if I shut down for 3 months? Doing that kind of like forecasting and scenario planning is what you would do with like a CFO on your team. So it just depends on what stage you're in, who you need, what accounting or financial person you need on the team. Those are like the main mistakes that I see, whether you're like a $250,000 business or a $10 million business. I see the same mistakes, but on varying levels.
Right. You said a lot of great things there. I'd love to delve into a couple of those points that struck me. We do have to take a commercial break. So in a way, it's perfect timing that you concluded those major 5 points when you did. So we're going to take a quick commercial break where we'll still be recording live here. So everyone could just stick around. We'll be back shortly. Again, this is Eric Sarver from Employment Law Today on Talk Radio NYC, here with my special guest tonight, Ms. Tricia Taitt, outsourced CFO, financial consultant, and principal of the Art of Money Matters. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Do you love or are you intrigued about New York City and its neighborhoods? I'm Jeff Goodman, host of Rediscovering New York, a weekly show that showcases New York's history and its extraordinary neighborhoods. Every Tuesday live at 7 p.m., we focus on a particular neighborhood and explore its history. its vibe, its feel, and its energy. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Hey, all you listeners, looking to boost your business? Why not advertise on Talk Radio NYC with very reasonable rates? Interested? Simply send us a message on our website, talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Graham Dobbin. Join me every Thursday evening for the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. We speak to people from business, sport, military, and politics, all around what makes a great leader. The personal experiences of what's worked and, maybe more importantly, what hasn't worked. So that's 7 o'clock every Thursday evening, the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. Listen to real stories of real leaders.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
And welcome back to Employment Law Today, here with my guest, Tricia Taitt, outsourced CFO and principal and founder of The Art of Money Matters, an outsourced CFO consulting firm. Tricia, it's great to hear those last 5 points when I asked you about the most common financial mistakes you've seen small business owners make during the different phases of the pandemic. And what I heard from you was it sounded like a lot of these points are mistakes, I should say, are mistakes that businesses have made even pre-pandemic. Am I right? Even before COVID? And perhaps COVID just brought them to light or exacerbated them. The people are lacking a plan. It's hurting them more. I was
Absolutely.
I was just going to identify, or by way of relating from the employment law, business law perspective, the two of the points you shared that jumped out at me. I'll just kind of relate to it with my clients. Has to do with definitely the lack of policies and procedures in place. I mean, you mentioned an employee handbook. I had a big smile and maybe a grin I was holding back, because I always stress the importance of a small business having a viable employee handbook and operating policies that have to do with everything from complying with social media policies, for example, or wage and hour overtime laws, to paid sick leave. And there's a lot out there. And having an outdated employee handbook it's like having an iPhone 4. It just won't cut it. And if you try it now, it'll break, frustrate you. But I've had clients who I always recommend updating, because each year new laws have passed and regarding discrimination. So I just wanted to, there's no question pending here, just sort of by way of identifying with what I've found and what I would impart to our listeners out there, folks in the audience, thinking about what they can take away from this tonight. Clearly, the importance of having policies in place around money and cash flow and operating, but I think for sure, employee handbooks, HR policies, very crucial. And then the other point you mentioned that struck me as interesting is about planning for the future. Something that we do in employment law proactively when we're trying to predict the possible areas where there might be a lawsuit and then take actions to cut that off, cut it off in advance. I guess what I wondered here is, do you have your clients rather do, you said a 6-month plan, like a plan and then a backup plan, like a contingency plan? I think this last 6 months have shown maybe the need for that. If you ask them what they're doing for the next 6 months back in December, they might have said, oh, well, here are my plans for January through July. So is there a backup plan that you do when you're hired by a company?
So I'm always persuading them to do some scenario analysis, but usually business owners aren't interested because they think everything is going to be rosy. I think what has changed with the pandemic is people know that they need some, like, in case of emergency planning. So there's I idealistically want to get here at the end of the year, but we need to stress test if 50% of sales don't come in, or 25, or we only get 25% of sales. I think I'm all of these things that I've identified as mistakes, all the suggestions that I'm making are not new. It's just the value that business owners put on it in the normal course of running their business has changed. A lot of people don't think of these things or don't invest in the expertise or the time or the resources to put
Mm,
these financial systems and processes or even people in place to help them
yeah.
until they get in trouble. I
Mm,
can't tell you how many clients I meet when they already have cash flow issues. There's a reason that they got there. There was something else that was happening before they got there.
mm,
I've met business owners, and again, this is pre-pandemic, but now many people are in trouble. I've met business owners that have tax liens and judgments. I've met business owners that have back payroll taxes because they didn't have a payroll service provider or somebody that had knowledge of what you're supposed to be doing with payroll handling it properly. So it's not until people get into I just had a call a couple of days ago with a
mhm,
multi-million dollar business owner who I told him we met December 2018. And
mm,
I said, you need to start your books from fresh, have someone set it up properly so that you could get the information that you need. It's not until the IRS knocked on his door and said, I don't think you paid sales tax for like 2 years. And they had to
right.
do a full on audit. And he was like, QuickBooks should give me this information, but it wasn't being done properly. And he didn't have the right bookkeeper. So now he's like at the end of himself and he's like, I am ready to go.
Mhm,
So a lot of these things, like I said, they're not new issues. It's just
mhm,
the pandemic has brought the dirt to the light and everyone is seeing the light. So
mm.
yeah.
Can really hear what you're saying, and I think you and I may have met some perhaps similar type of clientele. I get the ones that knock on the door or come to me. They met me perhaps maybe I was giving a seminar 2 years earlier, and then they come to me with a question. I recommend taking certain action, but then they sort of they go about their business. Things get kind of hectic. They come back a year and a half later with the Department of Labor a hearing notice or worse, the
Right.
determination that they violated the New York labor law. So I hear what you're saying about businesses' tendencies to wait until there's a problem to comply. And so what I hear is interesting about that. I hear the points about the pandemic pushing a lot of problems to the surface quicker and more imminently and right there in front of someone's face. So it's harder to, let's say, ignore or bury something on some paperwork or just, sort of bury one's head in the sand, not to sound harsh, but if that's kind of what happens, and just
Right.
point to some high profits that are coming in or good cash flow and think everything's all fine and dandy. Well, let me ask you this: what kind of, say, proactive measures do you take in the art of money matters? Like, could you give us some examples of now when the pandemic, some proactive measures that you'll have clients do, like a stress test? Can you maybe walk us through one of those, like what a stress test might look like?
Um, so I'm always looking at their financial statements, and most people go to the income statement where
Mm-hmm.
you have your revenues, your cost of goods sold, and your expenses, and it identifies your profits, right? And so we're always, when we work with clients, we're always reviewing that at least on a monthly basis to see the trends, to see where the business is still doing well, because there's always a story behind the numbers, and to see where there are areas of improvement. What you can do with income statement and look at it as a starting point, and then we could think, okay, we can imagine with a business owner, what do you want what it to look like in 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
And given where they want it to look in 6 months, what's the path to get there? What are the tools you need, resources, people, how much is it going to cost? So like we're doing all of that sort of planning out with them. And then how many clients do you think that you're going to get? Do you have deals in place? Is this fresh lead generation? Is this referral marketing? Like what distribution channels? What? So a lot of every decision has financial impact, and these conversations always drive what they're going to do from like a sales perspective, what they're going to do from a hiring perspective. It drives other parts of their business operations. Again, no matter what size the business. So once we've like thought about or imagined the future, and then we thought about steps of how we're going to get there. So now you've built something like a bit of a forecast. And then with that forecast, there is the, optimistic, everything goes exactly how we want it to go, which was probably like 2016, 2017. And then there is like, what if we don't get half of this cash coming in the door? And then there's the scenario of like doomsday, which you never think you're going to get to. But,
But here we are, right?
But here we are. And it doesn't have to be a doomsday. So it's like, if you're doing in case of emergency planning, then it gives an opportunity before it happens to brainstorm on what would happen. How would you access capital? How would you pivot? What other, services or products we can bring online depending on what's going on? How can we meet the customer's new needs? You never know what the customer's new needs are going to be, but you start to at least have a brainstorm session and sort of document that somewhere. So it's like the in case of emergency playbook, which is an ebook coming to theaters near you.
Great. You can
So
talk about that later too. Yeah.
So that's an example of one thing, and another thing that we do is absolutely cash flow planning. So it's always about like looking out, a couple of weeks, 6, 12 weeks, whether by month or weekly or daily. We had one client where we had a cash flow tool that was daily, because that's how tight, that's how cash strapped the business was. And so it's important to sort of like reassess ever so often, like what are the ways cash is going to flow in, and what are the ways cash is going to flow out, and sort of play around with it. So lots of scenario planning.
Right. I think that's great. And in terms of, I think having a plan, having also clarity around numbers is so empowering. I think, often people might find it tedious, or they might find it even intimidating, perhaps, if they're going to look at their numbers, look what they need to save, let's say, the bottom line that they're making, and might perhaps be a little fearful. But it sounds like by having that plan in place, they're actually in a more empowered position, because they have more awareness of what choices they can and can't make. So maybe something they would have chosen to do, now that they see, let's say, for example, the stress test of different scenarios, okay, I'm not going to spend this money, say, pursuing this avenue of my business, because if we don't get a super rosy picture this say quarter or this year, I might be in some kind of trouble. So it just strikes me as everything you're saying. And again, it strikes me as something I tell my clients too, which is the more you have a plan in place, it's very empowering, and B, you may think it's costing you a lot of time, and I'll think I don't have time for this, but I find, this is an observation here from my clients, that when we have a plan in place and we're working on compliance on a regular basis, in our situation, in my situation, it's clients with employment labor law issues, we're actually saving time and money in the long run. And we have a commercial break coming up, but I thought I'd ask you about that in terms of, how much time people devote to this and how much time it actually might save them on the other side of this, the scale, but you get a butcher scale there. We've got to take a break.
It's always more expensive to take care of a problem after the fact. Always more expensive.
And I dare say perhaps more time consuming also, right? Whether it's a legal problem, a financial problem, a tax problem. I think, often when I've had guests on the show and I ask them, to go into that, it's an important point. And I think we have got, again, a commercial break coming up in less than a minute. Maybe it's a good time to break and then come back to that topic. So I'll shoot for that question again in a moment. If everyone can just stay tuned here and tune in or stay tuned in. I'm Eric Sarver from the law office Eric M. Sarver, also host of this weekly show, Employment Law Today. Tuesdays, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm joined tonight by my guest, Ms. Tricia Taitt, outsourced CFO, financial consultant, and principal and founder of The Art of Money Matters. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you interested in having a better relationship with yourself, others, and God? Greetings. I'm your host, Dr. George Andow, For the show, A Journey Through into Awareness. On my show, we journey into the awareness that the mind of God is the true seat of our personal consciousness. We join together each Monday at 7 p.m., so tune in on Talk Radio NYC.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a curious person, always asking questions? Do you desire to be in the know? Then join me, Antonia, host of So Now You Know, Thursdays at 5 p.m. at talkradio.nyc. Listen in as I attempt to satisfy that curiosity. I will be talking with amazing, everyday people. Join the fun. So Now You Know on Thursdays at 5 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today here on talkradio.nyc. I'm here live with my guest tonight, Ms. Tricia Taitt. If you're joining us just now, Ms. Taitt has an MBA. She's also the outsourced CFO, financial consultant, and principal and founder of The Art of Money Matters. Tricia, interesting point before the break, just for those that may be joining us now, recap regarding just the importance and value of planning and how what I heard you say was that planning for financial situations, planning for scenarios, having clarity on your numbers actually can save you time and money. Where I think it's an important point because a lot of people think I don't have time for this type of planning and so forth. I did want to ask you, when you were starting, say, The Art of Money Matters, how did you apply some of these strategies towards your own company to build it? Any interesting stories you want to share with us as a audience?
Well, the interesting thing is some people dream about entrepreneurship. I didn't really have that dream or that bone initially. I'm first generation American, and my family came here and got college and master's educated and worked at a place for 20, 30 plus years. We don't necessarily do that in our generation. Once I had been working on Wall Street for 4 years at Merrill Lynch, and then I went to business school. And then I came out. The intention was not to go back to Wall Street. The intention was to find another way to apply my finance and accounting background. And so I took the easy way out. I had an internship at Citigroup and took the full-time offer. But the last recession provided an opportunity. So when I was laid off in like 2009, in my mind, I had already thought for at least a year or two, like there's gotta be something else different in life besides just, working on corporate and feeling like a peon. There's gotta be some other way. And at the time I thought dance would be the avenue. And so maybe I'd pursue the performing arts, which I did even more heavily, or maybe I'd support dance companies or performing arts presenters and things like that. So to get back to your exact question, when I started my business, I already had a lot of savings. There was an emergency fund already ready to launch. It didn't take much money to launch, but I've always operated with at least 3 months worth of cash, at least 3-4 months worth of cash, even now in the pandemic. So even if there is a hit in sales or a few down months. I noticed like somewhere in the summer, people aren't necessarily looking for my services, but at the top of the year, it's critical. And at the end of the year, it's critical. So even if there's seasonality or anything like that, I never grew up with this sort of like going down to the wire in terms of dollars. So cash flow management was always a critical thing in my book. And then having, one of the things I talk about is people don't have the right expertise around them, financial and accounting expertise. I have that background, but I am very clear on what I don't know well.
Right.
Now, it may have taken a while for me to hire the right people because like I overanalyze, I want to get it right. But
I'll do
I think
that
it's
when we're starting yet.
I
was just thinking when we start out, how many of us do that as well, overanalyze, hire the wrong folks, and then. But sorry, you were saying,
I didn't have any ego about I'm the entrepreneur. I call myself CEO, so therefore I need to know everything. I never had that ego. It was just about like, at what point do I need this person and who is the right person? Because I want to make sure that you want to make sure they have the same values, they're in alignment, and those things, right? So, having that whole thing about having the right expertise around was definitely something that, I always look for incorporated in my business. So there's a lot of components out of the 5 things that I talked about. Like, I'm a financial person, so I'm tracking performance. I'm tracking my numbers. I'm never like, the PPP was announced, and on behalf of my company, I called my business banker, because you should have a great relationship with your business banker. I called them like the weekend after it was announced, and I said, "Where is the link?" And we were ready to apply. Like that first week, we were in there, and so I couldn't fathom how people missed the boat. Like, how are you not ready to apply? Don't you have your numbers together? And again, it's like another reminder about how important it is to have your financials like ticked, tied, understood, ready to go, so that like you can jump on these opportunities. But so those are some of the things that we've applied into Art of Money Matters.
It's interesting, a couple of things you mentioned there, some observations, if I may. I mean, first of all, there's the importance of having your numbers clear, as we mentioned earlier. I hear a lot of that, and again, how you were ready to go with the PPP loan when that time came. Other people I know were still scrambling to get clarity about what their payroll costs were, what their expenses are, what's eligible costs, what, et cetera. So really good to hear that being applied, and also just hearing a theme too, how you mentioned the recession, and then that kind of prompted you to say, what am I doing with my life and myself, and just to pivot. And I hope that people listening tonight can take inspiration from that, be inspired, because again, part of the show, besides educating and informing, is to motivate and inspire. And so, if anyone out there is listening to this show and not, let's say, doing well with their revenue, or their restaurant that's just been struggling, or even a small business in a field that's taken a hit, just to know that sometimes from a negative challenge comes a positive. Like Tricia mentioned, the recession of 08, 09, sparking this. I know my personal experience was that I too did not plan to go into business for myself, for my own practice. My thought was to go to a labor and employment law firm and really kind of study there, and perhaps climb to a mid-sized firm there and become a partner, all handling employment law, business law that I always enjoyed, even in law school. And through some experiences, with some small firms, some positive, some kind of negative, really forced me to re-examine. And so something that I thought was actually a negative became a positive, and I think that, if you're out there struggling and you're having trouble, this might be a great time, let's say, to reach out to like Tricia Taitt, outsourced CFO, and say, hey, let me get my numbers clear. Or it might be a time to explore, are there any other ways your business can pivot? And if that's a possibility, again, is it a realistic possibility? So let's go back to like, is it legally viable? Or do you need, for example, certain licenses to do so? Is it financially viable? Can you say, talk to Tricia Taitt in Art of Money Matters and find out, what you, so that's interesting, just an observation line. I appreciate you pointing out these sort of silver linings, if you will, to some dark dark might be well, maybe a hacker term, but I'm mindful too of the night of our conversation. How, and again, you made reference to, but 4 years ago this evening, well, before the evening, I was feeling kind of in a good mood, and then by the end of the evening, not so much, and kind of shell shocked. But in terms of just good to hear your process and also how you apply it to your own company. You mentioned something I want to ask you a question about. You said you had 3 months worth of savings, was it, before going? Is that, so my question to you is there a certain metric of, like, a business should have X number of months of revenue saved, say, before hiring employees? Or is there any like metric you have there you recommend?
So, I mean, this is probably difficult to do if you hadn't done it before, but like, we never, time always, nothing lasts forever, right? So time always heals all wounds. So I think at minimum, business owners should have 3 months worth of cash saved. Now, the statistic is that on average, most business owners don't even have $400, not even $1,000 in their savings account. And that's a sad state of affairs. I hope that the pandemic has illuminated the fact that, when things are flowing better in this new normal, that they will, they will try to reserve some cash and have it like saved up somewhere. And I would say like 3 months is a good metric, but even if you have emergency funding, like 6 months is probably, ideal, but 3 months at least to start there.
And if a company comes to you and they say they don't have 3 months, they only have, let's say, a month or 3 weeks, or they barely have bottom line, are there certain other tools that you then emphasize that they use to help them maybe get to that 3 month savings point?
Well, the conversation will be, first thing that I would do is I would dig into their expenses and see if there's any places to cut costs or manage cash flowing out. That's the initial thing that you can control, but that's not always the saving grace. And then the second thing is, of course, how do we generate the right amount of sales? And sales is broken down into two things. Revenue. How can we generate more revenue? And revenue is broken down into two things. It's controlled by the amount of demand, the sales that you have, and it's controlled by price. And sometimes people are underpricing themselves. Even if you just look at their competitors, they're underpricing themselves, right? So then we go into that conversation of how can we boost these two things. So those are like the initial. Sometimes it's a little more complicated. Sometimes it requires like managing like your longer liabilities. Sometimes it's about identifying, getting access to capital. You might have the opportunity to access capital. I remember I was working with the event production company, and they already had a couple of lines of credit. But on the documents, so one of the financial statements that all banks look at, which is really important, is your balance sheet, which shows like the net worth of your business. And what wasn't communicated on the balance sheet was that they had an entire warehouse of equipment that had value. And if a bank knows that you have assets or equipment or something of value that can be used as collateral, maybe they will issue a loan against it. But if that's not communicated on the documents that you send them, then they will never know. So, I identified it. I identified that for the client, and then he had his ops person or his warehouse person like get to identifying the cost of the equipment or the value of the equipment that they had, so that they can appropriately put it on their financial statement. So sometimes it could be like a simple process, but there are probably multiple ways to figure out. Some people have unpaid invoices. I can't tell you how many businesses I go into, and they're afraid to call clients and ask for money that they earned already.
Right, that's your money. You worked hard for it. It's like if you walked into a store and was walking out with a merchandise or product, you expect to be stopped at the door. Excuse me, sir or miss, you have to pay for that product, and I'm also involved
Exactly.
with that as well when clients of mine are hesitant to collect on their invoices that they have with their clients. And then I can see some of the issues you mentioned there. Definitely some
And
really good.
some,
Oh,
so-
sorry.
some, I mean, some of that is, and I get it, right? Because like, you don't want to play bad cop with the same people that you want to give you more money, to give you
Sure,
more sales. Like, you don't want to destroy the relationship.
sure.
So in those cases, I come in and I was like, that's okay. I'll play bad cop. You can
Mhm.
play good cop and I'll play
Right.
bad cop.
Right, you can be that, like the axe, the hammer.
That's
We have to
right.
take a break, Tricia. This is a great, I think, area of questioning here, really area of conversation, I should say. Folks, we need to take a commercial break. If you stick around though, and you're a small or mid-sized business, I hope you are getting some value out of this conversation tonight. I'm Eric Sarver, employment law, business law attorney with the law office Eric M. Sarver. And the other hat I wear on Tuesday nights is a hip radio talk show host. You decide hip or not, but radio talk show host, I'll say, with employment law today here on the station talkradio.nyc. We'll be back in a moment. Stick
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sarver, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Do you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
So we're back. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Eric Sarver, host of the show Employment Law Today, continuing my conversation with Tricia Taitt, outsourced CFO, financial consultant, and principal of the Art of Money Matters, and founder as well. Tricia, thank you. We have some time still, but I want to thank you once again for all the great information you've given to our audience today in terms of just these 5 main points around saving of money and having the right team in place. And you spoke about a lot of different issues and then gave us your story as well. It's really interesting. I'm wondering if we can visit the topic of having a good team in place, because you mentioned that a few times. So besides having a CFO like yourself, let's say a small business, say, however you might define that, and let's say they have anywhere between 10 and 50 employees. What kind of team of experts might they need in their corner to help them to thrive?
So 10 to 15 employees, is that what you said?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 10 to 50, 50.
Oh, okay.
We
10
can
to
make it a
50
bigger group also, hypothetically. I'm just curious about the small, but
All right. So again, on your team or accessible, right? So we're going to use that word interchangeably.
Good point. Yeah.
So hopefully when you even started business, you had a good lawyer, a good CPA, and insurance person, right? Because you need those things. And then as you grow in terms of your financial team, it's important to have, somebody doing some bookkeeping or financial record keeping. I think once you start to get into having a lot of contractors or contractors who sort of border on being employees, you should at least have someone accessible that's familiar with how to manage HR issues and how to manage employment issues, right? So you definitely need some like workers' comp, insurance on hand, especially if you're in construction and manufacturing and you got people coming in and out of your place. Whether they are full-time, part-time, or contractor, like you want to make sure that you're covered. So of course the insurance person, and then payroll service provider. Like I work with a company that had that payroll tax returns were wrong. They didn't pay the right payroll taxes. Like don't screw with that sort of stuff. Like get a payroll. A lot of people start off with their CPA doing the payroll tax returns. It's really seamless if you have like QuickBooks Online to bring on, just use the service QuickBooks Payroll or use Gusto or something like that. Again, I'm not getting any money from any of these brands, but like this is what comes to me. So having a payroll service provider, integrating that into your business once you start to have some employees. Well, hopefully you've had a good executive assistant. You said professional services. On your personal side, hopefully you have some sort of like financial advisor also, right? Because and somebody that's always thinking about your succession planning and your, like your own retirement account or things like that. So always have a personal financial person. And then of course, as you add more employees, then the potential for employment issues become greater and HR issues become greater. So either you have an outsourced HR person, employment attorney like yourself, or you start to bring in someone that's a HR professional. I would also say along the way, it's important to have a marketing person and maybe marketing and salesperson, but definitely a marketing person that's helping to get your name out there. So those are some of the service. Oh yes, and because we are virtual, and we may stay virtual, a good IT person.
Absolutely.
That you could call when something trips, bleeps, blinks, falls apart, cybersecurity issues, have cybersecurity insurance, cybersecurity issues, like someone who could fix it, because like that could be, you could be shut down for a day trying to just deal with like IT crap.
Not to mention the cost you can incur. Let's say, I mean, I had Sean O'Rourke from Combs and Company, a cyber security, cyber reliability consultant expert on the show, talking about that as well. The cost there.
Oh, they're my insurance agency too.
Yeah, they're great. They really do a solid job. I mean, everyone you said there just is on my list too. Because when I talk to clients, I try to advise them about the employment law issues coming up, HR related issues as well, around hiring, firing, managing or terminating employees. And in those conversations, I often ask, well, what does your CPA say about this situation? Or what does your bookkeeper have, to show you? Or, for example, let's say if there's a question of independent contractors, well, whom do you hire for your video marketing? And often I think I'm surprised. Often I think people think that if they can't afford a full-time in-house person, they just don't hire someone. I think it's important to identify a point I heard you say is that it's great to have these people on your team. Does not mean you have to wait until you can afford a full-time in-house salaried HR person, full-time in-house salaried, in-house counsel or CPA. That's just a takeaway that I got there, that, you can have certainly outsourced people. I have clients that come to me on a periodic basis, but I'm their employment lawyer, their go-to person when it comes to management or rather termination issues. And then I have people that have me on a regular retainer every month. So, you have to look at what you can afford, also what your needs are. So interesting to have that, perspective about the importance of a team. I think it's
I
worth.
forgot. I think I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth reiterating, especially when you have a business that's like 10 to 50 employees. At that point, hopefully you're thinking strategically about your financials. Like hopefully there is someone more than the bookkeeper, more than the CPA that's touching your financials on a monthly basis and like doing an analysis of where are you from a health perspective and how are you going to plan for the future. So I think at that point, I mean, I'd be remiss to reiterate the importance of a CFO once you get to a certain stage in your business. And if you're focusing on the client that has 10 to 50 employees, I think at that point, they're sizable enough that they should have that person either on your team or accessible.
Mhm. You know, absolutely, Trish. And I would say this before our commercial break. I'd say that, you know, if you're looking at the themes of tonight, one thing I'm hearing that I hope our listeners might take away as well is that the myth that I remember growing up with about this sort of the entrepreneur who has to do everything themselves is just that, you know, it's a myth. And I think two takeaways that I come away with from the show here. Number one, you don't, in fact, it's actually harmful. It can be detrimental to try to think you have to control your whole startup. You know, like it's like, say, you know, you're a baby, your brainchild, so you don't allow people to assist you. And then number two, of course, just the idea that, you know, you can afford people in different, you know, different times in your the stage of your business. We have about a minute left, so I want to just, you know, cede that all to you. If you would like to say, like, leave our listeners with how they can contact you, you know, your website, your phone number, anything along those lines you'd like to leave with our listeners tonight?
Yeah. So the last sort of thing that came to mind as you were talking is that, you know, people are concerned, like, how am I going to find all of these people? And how can I find the people that I trust?
Mhm.
And so if you have some of these people in your wheelhouse, ask for referrals from them. If you have a CPA, ask for a referral to a good employment lawyer. If you're
Yes.
out there networking, make sure you're networking and getting these service professionals and have at least 2 or 3 that you can always potentially call on and sort of vet.
Mhm.
This is as a CFO, because I'm touching on a bunch of different service professionals and likely have to bring them into my client. I always have like a cadre of like, you know, CPAs or bookkeepers or insurance providers or HR related people that I can always refer in. So, you know, you're one of those people that I can refer into a situation. So I just wanted to say, you know, to just put people at ease and calm. The way that you can find people that you can trust is, you know, start with the one for service professional, but always be networking to have at least 2 or 3 service professionals. So if anyone wants to contact me or to get at me, I am on LinkedIn under Tricia M Taitt. That's Taitt. The company is Art of Money Matters. So you can go to artofmoneymatters.com. We are also on Instagram at Art of Money Matters. I'm not really on Twitter, but if you're a Twitter person, sometimes we put out a tweet. At Twitter, we're Art Money Matters. There's no of in the middle of it. Those are the ways that you can get in touch with us, get engaged, look at our blog posts, receive our information, and then be invited to other workshops and webinars that we have happening, especially as we transition into 2021. Like I said, planning is critical, planning is important. So I'll be talking about a lot of different topics over the next few weeks that have to do with planning and starting out 2020 stronger.
Wonderful. Tricia, we're at the end of our show. It went so quickly because it was so interesting. Thank you so much for being here on the show with us tonight. Once again, folks, Tricia Taitt, as she mentioned, you can go to LinkedIn and type in Tricia Taitt, T-A-I-T-T, or go to www.theartofmoneymatters, is that correct, .com?
Just Art of Money Matters.
www.artofmoneymatters.com.
Yes.
I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Everyone be healthy and safe and well, and we'll be back next week. Tune in Tuesday nights, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. I'm Eric Sarver from the law office. Eric M. Sarver, employment law and business law attorney and host of the show Employment Law Today. Thanks, everyone. And Tricia.
And if you haven't, thank you very much for this moment. And if you haven't voted, get out there and vote.
Yes. Exactly. Very, very well said. I voted already, and I hope everyone does get out there and vote. And we'll see what happens. So, but we do have to. It looks like we're right at the end of our time. So I don't want us to disappear into the ether. So thank you so much for being here. And Tricia, have a great night.
You too. Thank you. Be safe, everyone.
listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc.